if you look at the Jake Gardner case, you will see that there are people out there who, if you have a different opinion, will despise you and will want to banish you out of society. Now, a brief history on Jake Gardner. This is a summary. I don't have any of the information in front of me, and if I get anything incorrectly, please feel free in the comment section below to mention the facts about Jake Gardner. But he was protecting his business. He did have a firearm, and I believe his father was assaulted, and then Jake Gardner pulled out his firearm and fired it in the air, and it caused people to disperse. And then a gentleman came in, tackled him, put him in a headlock, and started to smash him in the head. Jake Gardner then proceeded to shoot him through, I believe, the left clavicle. And when the judge or the prosecutor looked at the case, he claimed it was a clear-cut case of self-defense. The video is on tape of what happened, the incident itself. Well, fanatical protesters went to this prosecutor's home, and they protested. And they protested his the decision of the prosecutor, and then the prosecutor reversed it and decided to go for the prosecution. And of course, Jake Gardner was then not allowed on any crowdfunding sites, which means he doesn't have access to a rigorous defense. Of course, all of the other rioters, and you'll have to bear with me, there is a siren in the background, but it becomes apparent that there are people out there Sorry, folks, I lost a little bit of my train of thought, but yeah, he wasn't given a fair access to justice because, of course, he is not given to the crowdfunding sites. Of course, the rioters, they were all given access, or many of them were given access to crowdfunding sites and money sites to destroy cities and businesses. But a man who defends himself, I guess because he's considered on the wrong side of the opposition, is not given anything. And if you look into this case, you will realize that the establishment doesn't like people with common sense and nobility. It actually has no use for them. I see that Joe has entered into us, so I will. I'm going to go off real quick and see if Joe has any response to what I just said. If any, Joe, do you have a response?
No. Kind of catching up on where you're going with this. Just a reminder to go to the website, transparencyandmerit.com. A few people have signed up in the last couple weeks, so keep on keeping on, and we need all the subs we can get at our website, transparencyandmerit.com.
Well, I will say this. I almost feel, and it looks to me like in many ways, these woke leftists are even worse than imperialist Japan that we fought in World War II, because at least they had a sense of honor. These individuals do not.
You know, I did read an article today that was a bit disturbing, but it ties in. And in Texas, the Satanists, the Satanic Church in Texas, is pushing for the laws to change on abortion and how abortions are performed. And now some of the details are just kind of really weird. But one of the doctrines that the article states that the Satanists go by, there's a couple doctrines. One is so there's two doctrines when a woman goes in for an abortion through the satanic cult. One of them is the third doctrine, do what art thou wilt. Basically, do what you want. And the fifth tenet of Satanism is that science above all else. Science has the final say. And so there's a straight line that could be drawn between the satanic cult and the leftists. And the article I wrote actually said as much. It was pretty interesting, but you could see it's such a cult-like feel to it. It's not even the left of when we were young. It's totally changed, of course, like everything else. And all I can say is it feels like a cult. I'm going to post a link to that article that I'm talking about too, by the way.
Well, leftism is a cult, and it's a vindictive cult filled with malice. And they want control of society. They have control of the levers of the establishment. And, I guess the only thing you can do is boycott when you can. You don't need Disney Plus. You don't need to drink Coca-Cola.
Let me reread that here. Okay. When ready, she will say the third and fifth tenet of the temple allowed. The third tenet affirms a key platform of Satanism, do as thou wilt, except in the context of women getting an abortion. The fifth honors science as be-all, end-all source of truth in the world, urging Satan worshippers not to distort scientific facts to fit one's beliefs. It's the same platform as the Democratic Party, which worships science, abortion, and lawlessness. In fact, Satanic Temple might as well be the Democratic Party, as the two entities share the same beliefs. By the way, the Satanic Temple also attempted all of these things. They go around the country filing lawsuits. They had a similar set of lawsuits in Missouri, all of which failed in 2019. The Missouri Supreme Court dismissed one such suit after Judge Laura Denver Sith And 4 fellow justices explained that satanic members could have just refused to accept the informed consent pamphlet, which was one of the which would have been one of the orders there, that basically the Satanic Church refused basically to give informed consent pamphlets to their to the people, because they're just going in and doing crazy things. Anyways, there's a tie-in here, and I see it, and it's this worship of science. I don't usually go around waving a flag for pro-life or pro-choice or any of that sort of stuff, but that's there's a general sense of lawlessness to it, and Antifa is a good example of that, at least in the media.
Well, I think they are. Many Antifa members are in the media, and I actually had conversation with a gentleman who talked about Andy No. He said a lot of things, and I'll get into that later. I might even, if you welcome, I'd welcome him on my show to discuss these issues. But again, I feel that these people have such malice and such vindictiveness, you can't even converse with them. The only thing you can do is strive to flee from them. And again, I'm talking to you, the people out there who are truck drivers and farmers and people who own farmland. Do you want to be free? Do you want to live in a free society of freedom of speech and freedom of thought? Can we create an internet that where freedom of speech and to express your freedom of thought, is that going to be allowed? Because again, we don't have to have these big platforms. It's nice to have them, and they're going to control policy, but there can be less of them, and we could, to a degree, we can fight back. Number one, with our dollar, with our currency, and not just in America, but we can fight back this throughout the civilized world. And you can either choose to stand against this kind of thing, this myopic, vindictive form of malice, faith of the woke left.
Brian, at the end of the day, it's about standing up for not only for what you believe, but it's about standing up for yourself, not looking for handouts, and getting basically being ready and prepared to live a life without the safety nets that are proven to be a complete joke, dogmatic to the nth degree.
Well, I mean, people need to get healthy, and they need to, basically get healthy, work hard, and build something better, and try to flee and resist those that have these dogmatic beliefs. I mean, it's I for one have never seen people like this. I mean, this is unbelievable that these people have this kind of power, and the only thing you can do is just talk about it and get others. Hopefully there'll be others on your side. A lot of people right now are in fear, and they are afraid. But I think the more people, even quietly, who resist with their dollars and their money, and they work hard and they show nobility, they can build a society that is far superior and better than the society that we're living in today. They'll have better entertainment, even if it's not, big Hollywood productions. and you can build your own society. Even, you don't have to live in lavishness. You can live in limited and have limited means, but be around individuals that are more noble and better. Because these woke leftists are anything but no, they are the least noble people around. They are fanatical. I mean, to me, a fanatical person, you can't be noble and be a fanatic. And the bias is unbelievable. I've had more than one time where I've had conversations with people and they begin to gaslight me. And when a person gaslights you, they've told you everything that you need to know. When people put when a person like Malcolm Nance says that Antifa is akin to sports rioters and compares them to Super Bowl rioters, he's telling you everything you need to know. And if you don't dismiss that kind of person, you're telling me everything I need to know about you. Anyway, Joe, is there anything to say before I end this show and just say, hey, folks, be as brave as you can, and you have your human rights to speak your mind.
And if you're offended by a plastic potato, please check your head.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you're offended, if you're easily offended, go somewhere else. And I can challenge your arguments. If you don't want me to challenge your arguments or your statements, then you know what? We don't need to be around each other. Anyway, this has been Transparency and Merit. Like and subscribe and share this video if you gain anything from it. And those that do not like it, please tell me why. Now, most of them don't. They don't have any comment whatsoever, and that's fine. They just put thumbs down, and this is a lot of leftists. They just go to destroy you, and they don't tell you why. They just go and do it. And when they do that, well, they are telling you everything you need to know about them. And what are you going to do about it? My suggestion right now is to strive to gain as much money and as much power as you can where you don't have to deal with them. Anyway, Joe, is there anything to add before I end this show?
Yeah, I mean, just to add to what you just said, build. Sure, right now is the time to have the bags open. Right now, at least it has been. If you've been working hard, you've been saving money. There's been less to spend money. I think people are starting to realize that. But I'd also encourage people to build their spiritual fortress. And I think that's a huge component here that's been missing to in a lot of the shows that I hear of similar ilk, shows that might be our competitors. I think, yeah, get power, fill those bags right now with that money, save while you can, but also be aware spiritually. And I would say that's all a very independent type of quest, but everybody should be working on that as much as or more than building your coffers.
Find out what you need and discard the rest. And there's very few things that you need.
And also, what do you have to offer your communities? I'm building gardens. I'm trying to eat better, so I'm growing my own every night. When I eat dinner, I add something that I grew from my own garden, and it's enriching. It is spiritually powerful, and it also helps me feel more independent of the system, and I'm putting my money right where it belongs, my own stomach, grown with my own hands, and that's empowering. But I encourage that people consider, what do you offer your own community first and foremost, before you start thinking and arguing about things on a national, federal level. What are you doing in your own home that makes your community a better place to live in? And that's my I wish everybody had that sort of mentality in the community where I live. That's it.
Well, it is good, if you can start a garden, it's always good to be able to grow your own food and be able to feed yourself as much as possible. This country, America right now, does have an obesity problem. We do eat too much, and a lot of our health problems are the overconsumption of food and the consumption of bad food. We are an addicted people that way, and that's one of the reasons why, if we ever do get COVID, why the mortality rate is the way it is with certain people that are overweight, are not healthy. You owe it to yourself to be as healthy as possible. And one of the reasons I'm fasting is to gain health, and also fasting helps you gain knowledge. And it's kind of like you're in a cocoon and you're going to sprout those butterfly wings to knowledge, and knowledge is power. No one can take it away from you. No one can give you, no one can force you to have compliance. They may even take your life, but they don't have your compliance. Joe, anything else to add?
On this topic, we're good.
You know what? I do want to welcome Debate Me. He has come to our show. And maybe, I might just, let me see if I can invite him to the StreamYard real quick and see if he will come in. I don't know if he will.
I'll put a number up there too, if that helps.
I do see him out there, and I put a thing on the StreamYard on it. I'll give him a few minutes.
We also have Skype up, so if Skype's easier, Skype in. If you want to talk to Brian and Joe,
yes, it would be kind of interesting because I've heard his show. He is Debate Me has a diplomacy. I do question his I don't think he acknowledges how bad the left is and how vindictive the left is and how myopic they are. I've asked him a few questions, and I think there are things that are rooted in certain roots. Oh, we have Debate Me. Well, we have Debate Me. Debate Me, how are you, sir? It's good to see you here.
Welcome to
What's
the
going
show.
on, man? How you doing?
Great.
It is, yeah. You know what? We've had a few conversations. I'll turn off the music. We have had a few conversations about Tim Pool. Yeah. And I feel, and you know what, Joe, to a degree, feels the same way about him as you do.
I can't stand him. I absolutely hate Tim Cook.
See, that's of transparency and merit. Joe says he deals in fear porn, is what he says. It's all
it's fear porn. It's fear porn, and I never knew just how hard it was until I started really focusing in, and it was like every transition was another fear tactic. But anyways, I'll let you guys kind of get at it.
The left, they're crazy. They're coming in our farm. They're gonna take all our kids. They're gonna take over the whole neighborhood. I gotta go buy a house in the woods
Well, you're on it, man. You're on it.
Well, okay, but don't you think I mean, because I've talked to some of the BL. I mean, like I've observed some of the BLM in action, and they seem like a cult. You know, they have chants, and you know, why do we downplay?
Well,
go ahead.
Well, I'll respond to that, and I think what I probably want to do is this is better for me to respond to the last question you asked me that I was going to respond to.
Okay.
These are kind of things that are much better done in this format than like me to write you a long novel. So on the craziness of the left. So what I was going to say to you is the way that I view things like that is this woke left thing. I view that as red meat for the right. It is the equivalent of racism on the left. So there's a whole structure of profiting from certain narratives. You have the elite class, so corporate media. You have also even these independents. I mean, look at guys like Crowder. I mean, these guys are millionaires, and the way they make money is from these red meat topics, right? So if I want to make a lot of money, I have a couple avenues. I can go with the right wing avenue, and then I can make a bunch of videos about cancel culture and you know, the liberals, they're insane and blah blah. And there's a massive audience of people that will eat that up, and they're just like, yeah, I can't stand those, whatever. Now, if I want to go the other avenue, the other red meat is the racism thing. So I can go on the left, and I can be making videos about they shot another black man, and it may not be relevant that he's a black man, but that doesn't matter. If my goal is profit oriented, there's a huge demographic that I can easily pander to, and just everything's about race and racism, and Trump's a racist, and this person's a racist, and that person's a racist, and I can sit there and watch all these views and clicks coming in. Meanwhile, I don't even believe the stuff that I'm saying, but I just know it makes me money. And that's what I see happening on both sides. So when you say the woke left thing, my personal view, I don't get caught up in that kind of, let's call it candy. So I'm not going to get caught up into something that people are doing essentially for money. And of course, politicians, they fit into that as well. I mean, for them, it's their shield. So if I'm a Republican politician now, and I want to be able to keep all this money coming in and this power coming in, and I want a shield to protect me from actually doing any work, or maybe I want to do some corruption, then I use these red meat topics, right? So I get on the floor and the Democrats and Pelosi and they're coming, and there's cancel culture and blah, 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 and this is the worst thing that's happening in this country right now is this cancel culture, blah, blah, blah. Right? If I'm on the left, I do the same thing. You know, we got to come together, and you know, these Republicans, the racist, everyone's racist, and we got to do this unity movement, and we want inclusion and whatever. And what happens is, by me distracting people with that, whether I'm on the right or the left from the political side, I can get away with doing nothing or doing corruption. So while I'm basically betraying the people who voted for me, either I'm not doing work or I'm making money from my position. I look at the thing with McConnell's wife, right? And you're not going to hear about that probably on the right. I haven't checked it, but I'm assuming they're not going to talk about it, about how she was using her position to basically profit. And there was an investigation. Of course, Trump shut that down. You can do that stuff and get away with it because the people who vote for you, the people who would be the ones to hold you accountable, they're not paying attention because you're distracting them with this cancel culture. Right, so you're putting that out there. They're reacting to it. Everyone's outraged and the left, the liberals, whatever. Meanwhile, you're sitting there making millions of dollars. You're not really doing any work. You're betraying your voters. And then next election time comes, all you do is you pop up and you say, socialists and the left, and they're extreme, and you don't want any of that. So what happens? You vote me back in. Same thing on the left. Pelosi, she does nothing. A lot of these Democrats, they do nothing. But they focus on these red meat topics, distract the public, and they're all focused, and everyone's, so, you know, the left is fighting with the right. You guys are racist. The right is fighting with the left. You guys are all racism or whatever it is. Cancel culture. And then election day, the Democrats stay in power. Republicans stay in power. It's a scam, right? So for me, what I'm concerned about is not the woke left. I'm concerned about jobs. I'm concerned about the economy. I'm so concerned about healthcare. I'm concerned about the infrastructure in this country. Our roads are falling apart. Look what just happened in Texas. I'm concerned about things that really, really matter. And I just want to clarify, I'm not saying that the topics that they're using for red meat are irrelevant. Racism is a thing. They just over-report and over-focus on it and make it a bigger thing than it really is, where, if there's a police shooting, it's not automatically racism, but because of all these incentives, they will make it about that. So cancel culture, I'm not saying it's irrelevant. Yes, there is probably some stuff that's happening that's excessive and does need to be looked into. But what I am saying is there are more important issues that we're not paying attention to. And a key one is the exact scam, which is we've got swamp on the right, swamp on the left, and they're able to keep power for decades because they keep us fighting with each other and distracted. So we don't see that. Wait a minute. What are you guys doing, Republicans? What are you guys doing, Democrats? Vote them out. Vote out the Republicans. Vote out the Democrats. Get some people in office that can actually make change about things that are really important and stop playing with us and using us as pawns for profit and power. That's my long rant.
That was. I agree with. I'd have to think about it before I like. But my opinion is this. The internet. At first, social media, it was the Wild West, and people could have ideas and things like that, and it was the woke left, and I call it, and you may find it offensive, but the civil rights industrial complex that didn't like certain things that were being said because it hurt, to me, more or less, it hurt their ideology. And I think ego is a large part of the woke left. And it's also part of the right, too. There are people who get caught up on that as well. But you can't get the truth if you don't debate, if you don't have discussions. And we're not having discussions right now. And it is primarily the left that does not want to do that. And they are. Go ahead.
I'm concerned that you might be a victim of a little bit of this rabbit hole that I'm referring to. That's letting you think that way, because I'm pretty sure if I speak to a typical leftist, they're probably going to say a similar argument to what you're saying, and that's what I'm finding. Like, me as an outside observer, I look at what the right is doing and what the left is doing, and I look at the arguments and stuff, and I say this all the time on my channel. It's two sides, same coin, right? Because look at, even in my own personal life, I have a friend who's a liberal. I have a friend who is a Trump supporter, Republican, whatever. It's like they're the same person. They're both very emotional. They're both very caught up in their political ideology. I mean, I talk to my liberal friend about anything, trying to let her, like, for example, Pelosi. She loves Pelosi. I'm just like, Pelosi's trash. And I try to let her know why. She's not hearing it. She's all like, oh, go watch Fox News, whatever. My Trump friends, same thing. You can't talk to them. They don't want to hear anything negative about Trump. Anything negative about Trump is, oh, you're watching CNN. It's like I'm talking to the same person. And yet both sides feel that the other side is so different. And it's like, yeah, if you're caught in that tunnel, I can see how you might see it that way. And the analogy that I make is you have both sides are in a pit, right? And you as an individual on a side, you're on the edge of a pit, and you're looking across at the other pit, right? And your attention is all focused forward, and you're looking at those people, and you're like, look at you, you idiot. Look at all those zombies behind you. Don't you see those zombies? You're an idiot. Look what you're in. Something is very bad happening, and you don't see it because you're looking this way. But meanwhile, you're in a pit as well, and you have the same zombies around you, but you never stop and like, wait a minute. Let me take stock of where I am and what my viewpoints are, and make self-assessment. Like, whoa, wait a minute. There's a lot of trash over here too. Let me focus on what's happening over here. No, both sides on the edge of the same pit, looking out at the other group, and all you see is that other group. And of course, social media amplifies this, right? If you're watching right-wing media, they're going to constantly keep showing you the left, liberals, cancel culture. If you're on the left, it's, oh, racism, whatever. And none of us are taking the stock to like look back and see what's happening on your side. Because the same way you're saying, like you said, the left, like, there's no conversation. like I just illustrated, I have people on both sides, and I can't talk to them. It's not a matter of whether they're conservative or liberal. The common theme is emotional, and also sort of radicalized. Like they're like my liberal friend, she's watching liberal media, so they're constantly bombarding her with this race stuff and whatever nonsense and the virtue signaling. So it's hard for her to be able to, like, I can't communicate with her. My Trump supporter friend, same thing. He's in the right-wing media and he's constantly being bombarded with the cancel culture stuff and this and that and that. And they're not really talking about the problems on that side. So we can't really talk to each other. So it's like we need to unplug from social media, unplug from these liberal media and whatever, and self-reflect and focus on our own party. The people that you voted for, pay attention to those people. What are they doing? Like, are they doing their jobs? Like, who do we need next election? Like, this is what I think both parties should do. If you're a Republican voter, next election, you should be making a plan right now for who you're going to vote out. Who are you going to vote out in 2 years? And then 2 years later, who else are you going to vote out? Clean house. We've got swamp on the left and swamp on the right in these two parties. We need to get them out. All these like decades and decades, Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham, what's the other one? Pelosi and Schumer, and get the trash out. Forget about the other party. Focus on the people who are governing where you live and get them out of there. Sorry, I'm
well, no, you know what I mean?
I'm passionate.
It's a good rant. It's a good rant. And one quote I like, I've been using more than ever is whenever I feel that way, I tell the people, a house divided will not stand.
Yes.
And take what you want from Abe Lincoln, right? Not everybody's friend, but that quote and the speech that he gave where he said that is shockingly relevant now.
Yep, absolutely. And I think this is probably got to be one of the best scams that I've ever seen. I mean, look at even Joe Biden. How long has this guy been in our government?
Oh,
and
no,
even
he's the
now,
worst. The worst.
He's still able to go and present himself as like, oh, we're going to make all these changes. And here's the irony. Because of this divided nature, you have people on the left who can still fall for this stuff. Like, I have people that I talked on the left, and they still have this idea of like, give him a chance. I'm like, the guy is not a young buck. If he hasn't done this stuff by now, when is he going to do it? But Trump made these very same points during the debate. But if you're in the left bubble, you won't hear Trump saying that because Trump is evil. So anything he says is nonsense, right? But if you look at it objectively and you hear, wait a minute. So he says, Joe Biden, in the 47 years, what have you done? The objective person says, what has he done? And then you actually take a look at it and you're like, wait a minute, he's part of the very swamp. I mean, our country is broken and it didn't happen overnight. So clearly somebody that's been in the government for as long as he has, clearly he's part of the problem, right? And at his age, he's not gonna have some kind of moment where he's just kind of like, now, how old is he right now?
77, I believe. He's going to be in his 80s. Yeah. He's going to be
77 going to like all of a sudden like, oh, wait a minute. Let me actually like change my ways and now I'm going to be all progressive or what? Of course not. If he hasn't figured this stuff out by now, he ain't. I hate to kind of give up on someone, but let's be realistic, man. He had decades and decades to have this eureka moment.
Well, all politicians are, I don't know any politician that is not an opportunist. I mean, I mean, Trump talked about the 1994 crime bill. And if you look at that bill, it had bipartisan support. And a lot of, I think about 40% of the Black caucus supported it. And it had, a lot of Black pastors supported it. So, again, they're putting out some of the arguments that they put out are not necessarily good and noble arguments. They're just, they're just talking points and they mean nothing. Even the stuff about, the Democrats were the real racists. That means nothing. What does that mean today? What are you doing today?
And And then it's also this kind of binary, like everything's black and white. Like I don't know how I feel about Cruz, but I think he is absolute trash. But unlike the typical like just emotional people we have in this country, regardless of what side of the spectrum you're on, I was able to actually watch Cruz at the hearing recently regarding the Capitol stuff and say, wow, he's actually in this moment asking some serious, valid questions, presenting himself as a mature adult. He's actually, in this moment, he's actually being a productive member of our government. He's trash. I think he needs to be removed. But that doesn't mean that he's like Satan. So anything he does is like garbage. Just like Trump, for example. I'm not a fan of Trump, but Trump was absolutely right in his what he said about Joe Biden in 47 years, whatever. But that's not how a lot of people think. It's either you're good or you're bad, right? So AOC, you don't like her, so she's evil. So she can go to Texas, raise $5 million for what is mostly Republicans in a red state, and not a single conservative even mentions it. I mean, you could make a video and say, hey, AOC trying to show up Cruz, it's a political stunt. I mean, you could take that approach if you want to, but they didn't even want to say that. It's not even worth mentioning. You know what I mean? Because again, it's black and white. AOC is evil, so even doing a great thing like that, you're not going to acknowledge it, right? And vice versa. Trump is evil, so anything he says must be wrong. It must be evil, and this can't work.
I think for me, and why I see leftism is the biggest problem. I don't see any harmony within leftist nations. There are people that can go, like, you can be a black or white person and go
internationally. You're saying?
What's that?
Internationally, you're saying? Is that what you mean?
I'm saying on average, I think leftism, woke leftism makes for division.
Because you're saying globally, right? You're talking globally, not just in the country.
I would say I would say globally. Yes, I believe that. I believe that globally it does not make for unity.
You do realize that the most conservative countries in this world, that's where you find a lot of terrorism, right? Like a lot of these Middle East countries, they're highly conservative countries.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't believe in ultimate conservatism either. I also don't believe in woke in the kind of woke leftism. I mean, I have known. All right, who's this calling? I hope it's not Howard.
Uncle Joe.
Yeah. But was that someone calling?
Everything is black and Jew.
Oh, geez, it's Howard. Howard, okay, this is the one angry Jew. As I was going to say, I knew a black gentleman who was French, and he was in the French Foreign Legion, and he said he was fully embraced, and he fully embraced his French identity. His culture was basically France. I know of a black person who was in Japan, and he embraces the Japanese culture and the Japanese people, and that's a conservative society.
Now we have another caller here. Are you here, caller?
I have to ask a question.
Brian, can you hear?
Show me in the law where it defines what is a black person.
Now, a person
You never thought of that one, did you?
A person of color or a black person?
No, a black person.
Oh,
in the law,
Show me where in the law a black person is defined.
Well, the reality is that's one of the oldest running jokes in our society. The very concept of race, which is in 2021, it's kind of embarrassing that we still acknowledge that, and that's still a big part of our society.
People don't know the history.
Yeah, from what I've seen historically, I mean, the whole thing was created, and it's crazy. I see the roots of this race concept. It's rooted in something that's still happening today, and the thing about it is greed. It was all about cheap labor. You use people that look like you to use them as slaves, and then other people are like, you can't do this is inhumane. So then you invent this whole idea of, oh, these people over here that look different, they have brown skin, they're not human, they're something else. So now it's kind of like it's like you have horses. We have horses and we use them to pull things, it's like that, right? So now it's more palatable. It's kind of like, oh, okay, it's those Negroes, right? They're not human, so that's okay, but don't do it to humans like us. But it's like, okay, fine. That was back then. We didn't know much, but it's 2021. Like, when are we going to get rid of this ridiculous idea? I mean, it doesn't even make sense on the surface. Like, I'm not black, like, and even my father, who is much darker than me, I had a conversation with him, and you can see he's confused because I asked him about his skin color, and he seemed like he was confused about the fact that his skin is actually brown. And that, like, you would never have a shirt that's this color of his skin, and you would never call that a black shirt, right? So the words don't make sense. Like, no one has white skin, no one has black skin, so even the names make no sense. There's no science behind it.
Well, the word
it is, just to end on this final point, is the whole reason that this whole thing started, it's still happening now, but it's booming because what happened is back then you needed a small group to basically oppress and get the cheap labor from. Now they've expanded it. It's equal opportunity. So now the slaves are, whatever, Asian, whatever, it doesn't matter your skin color. We can all be slaves. We're going to pay you $5 an hour, right? Where you can barely eat and pay your rent or whatever. If I'm rude to you or whatever, you can't do anything because you can't just leave. What are you going to do? You need this job. So I'm going to treat you however. I'm going to limit your hours so you get no health care. I'm going to do whatever you want so that what? So that Walmart or whatever, right? So they can get all this cheap labor and the 1% can just get richer and richer and richer and richer and richer, right? But it's the same thing. It's all about cheap labor. That's the way I look at it.
Howard,
how do you describe the Pink Man, Mr. Midnight Movie?
The what man?
The Pink Man.
I don't know what you mean by that. I mean, you're just.
You don't look very white to me. You look very pink.
Exactly.
I could be. Here's the deal. I mean, like, the term black came into vogue by the civil rights community because before they were called colored or Negro, and then Jesse Jackson said after Martin Luther King passed away in 1968, he was on an interview and he said, "Please don't call us Negro, call us black," and that was the term that they wanted. I'm not saying right or wrong. I'm saying that that's the origin. And
well, where did this African American crap come from? Because my ex-African girlfriend says that none of these fools have ever been to Africa. She doesn't even know why they call themselves Africans. They think they could survive in Africa.
Well, I mean, I like the term American of African descent, American of European descent, better than any of those other terms. And can we get along? Like I said, can human beings get along? I think that they can, depending on the individual. The collective, I'm not sure, because right now they don't.
I think if I had the power to go back in time and change things to a way that I think is more sensible, in my view, in my opinion. Like if I could have gone in and I can go and change the laws or whatever. What I would have changed is, and what I think is missing is, I think there's a valid need to be able to communicate physical characteristics. So first, in terms of how a person looks, so there should be a whole, like, if I want to describe somebody just based on physical looks, so not on this race thing, right? So maybe let's say, for example, caramel. You know, maybe there's a term that we say caramel, and that just refers to, so you could be an Indian, you could be like, it's not about really where you come from, it's just how you physically look. I think those are the words, and also words that that are specific to culture. So let's say, for example, you were born in Jamaica and you're Jamaican by culture. Doesn't matter if, you know, people look at you and say you look like a Chinese or whatever. It's not about your physical, it's about the culture, because these are the things that are really real. So if you go in certain neighborhoods in this country, let's say you go, I know Compton is different now. Let's say you go to Compton. What you see there is cultural, because it doesn't matter what you look like. If you were born in Compton, you're probably going to act like people who are from Compton act.
Have you ever, by the way, just out of curiosity, have you ever heard of the book White Liberals, Black Rednecks, Thomas Sowell?
I have not.
Yeah. Well, he did say that a lot of inner city, like inner city culture is, derived from kind of white cracker culture, or that came from the British Isles, like things like chitlins. That comes from the British Isle. A lot of the fried chicken, fried food, all originated from the British Isles. And
wait a second, I like fried chicken.
Yeah, well, it comes from the British Isles. I don't like fried chicken, by the way. I'm not a fan of it. But
I guess the short of it is, I think it's more important and relevant for us to communicate about cultural differences, not so much, this whole black and white. Because let's say you're quote unquote a white person, but you were born and raised in some African country, or you're born and raised in Japan, or you're born and raised in German, right? What's really relevant is not your physical looks. It's going to be the culture that you adopt. So if we're looking for a way to communicate something about you that is relevant to your behavior, which comes from the culture, not from your skin, then I feel like those are the words that we should be using if we need to communicate those things. But the focus on the melanin in your skin, like, that's irrelevant.
But the thing is, right now, if you talk about culture and you talk about standards and different cultural norms, you will get that is where the left doesn't want to hear it. I remember Milton Friedman, the famed economist. He said there was I think it was a guy from a gentleman high up in the Swedish government, and he said, in Sweden we don't have a lot of poverty, or Swedes don't have a lot of poverty. And Milton Friedman responded was, Swedes don't have a lot of poverty when they're here in America either, which means, to a degree, their culture is different and more productive than, say, other European cultures or other cultures in general. And there is a truth to that. Some cultures do better economically than others, particularly in America, when you consider, all different types of groups with different types of skill sets. They're going to come at a different place. And go ahead.
Let me ask you this. This is something that I've always wondered, and that's one of the reasons why I started the Debate Me channel. I really wanted to long term get more dialogue between both sides and try to understand where both people are coming from. So, for example, on the topic of racism, so this is the really absurd thing that I've noticed, and that's why it's really, really powerful that you do everything you can to stay outside of any echo chamber. That's why I follow like 50 different news sources, from far left to far right, everything in between, corporate, independent. I'm even watching racist websites, so I can actually see what actual racists are thinking. rather than taking a narrative from liberal media. So that being said, what I've observed in terms of racism, it's very bizarre on both sides, and I want to hear what your feedback is. So what I see is on the left, there is an obsession with making everything about race, and I think it's profit oriented. You know, the media makes money from this narrative, and because they're making money from it, they keep talking about it, and by doing so, it's like a cycle. So they're sort of brainwashing their audience. You know, like the audience are already, like, racism is a thing, right? So they already have experienced things in their lives, and then they watch the media, and the media is amplifying it. So now it's more confirmation, like, see, yeah, another cop, whatever, right? So there's a lot of conversations about race. Now, some of it is over the top, and it's like there's that profit motive. And then there's also some of it it's good conversation, like it's educational. We can learn more about these things. Now let's go over to the right. Very bizarre. On the right, no one wants to talk about racism. The only time you see a conservative commentator talking about racism, it's to mock the left. Now, the left needs to be mocked in terms of, because of the race baiting and whatever. So, for example, look at something like Jacob Blake. I mean, there was so many. I mean, this guy raped a woman. There's a second camera angle where you can see him fighting with the cops. I mean, so many factors. A criminal record, his past with the cops, right? But it's profitable to just focus on, they shot another black man, right? So in that instance, you will see a conservative talking about it, but they're only talking about it because they're showing how the left is being dishonest and how they are, this race baiting thing. But you'll never see a conservative commentator like doing it better. Like, they would rather focus on calling out the left on being ridiculous with race rather than themselves let's have an actual rational conversation about what this racism issue actually is, right? They're making you think on the left that it's like everywhere you go, black people are being shot by the cops, and we know that that's not true. So let's talk about what actually is true. So meaning, when you actually have racism happening, no one wants to talk about it on the right. Everyone's silent. Like, and what I see is that they're waiting for something that's never going to happen. The right is waiting for, in my opinion, they're waiting for some senator to be caught wearing a white hood, or to be caught, saying, black people are monkeys, or to be caught saying, black people are stupid. Like, they're waiting for the in-your-face racism before they'll even discuss it. So it's all or nothing. Either you come all out in your white hood, otherwise there's nothing to see here. It's nothing worth talking about. But by the way, have you seen the leftists? How they the George whatever, like everything's about race, whatever. Like, why do you think that is? Why is it that there's no level of racism that's worthy of discussion on the right, unless it's somebody in a hood? Like, what is the reluctance?
Why have you focused on the word racism?
Okay, let me comment on this. Hold on. Let me comment. Hold on. Let me comment on this first before I. What I observe. Can dude? This is my show. Let me comment on this, and then I'll let you chime in, Joe. I mean, Howard.
Chiming in. Get me.
Okay. Let me address this issue real quick. I feel that conservatives, to a degree, feel extremely attacked, and they also feel an absolute double standard on who's allowed to say what and who's allowed to talk. I mean, I'll give you an example of two people, Tariq Nasheed and Stefan Molyneux.
Okay.
Stefan Molyneux is, after there was a whole George Floyd effect, after the incident with George Floyd, all of the right-wing conservative, what they call to be racist, or white supremacists, were completely cut off. However, people like Tariq Nasheed, I can get into a few of the other so-called black nationalists. They are allowed to say and get away with things that other groups are not, because the leftist establishment allows that to happen.
Al Sharpton.
Yeah, well, Al Sharpton has been exposed.
Wish I knew what your point was. Did you have a point in all that rambling?
You know what? I thought I did, but do you have a point, Howard?
Yeah, I'm a bigot, not a racist. Tired of hearing the word racism.
Okay. I don't know how to add into that. I personally think that anybody can be a racist and anybody can be unnoble.
Absolutely.
And
No, anybody can be a bigot, not a racist. Not everybody can be a racist. Look up the definition of what the word racist means. Anyone can be a bigot, but not everyone can be a racist. Let's have a little bit of clarity in language.
Why do you say that, Howard?
You tell me. What's the definition of racism?
The definition of racism, from my understanding, and I'm not going to Google it like and put it on thing, but
We don't say Google anymore. We say we're not going to search it.
Okay, I'll just give my own personal definition of racism. I'm not going to go into the Webster's thing. I won't research it at all. Here's my definition. It's treating somebody with prejudice, even and they have no recourse to change the facts of mind. It's a myopic belief that it's a myopic belief that this person is how they are regardless of their character. I've
already characterized you because you're a pink man. So
there we go.
Racism, or is that just bigotry?
I mean, racist from the definition, and from what I've seen, most people don't really know what racist is. Like what's happened, what you see talked about, they usually focus on the hate stuff. So they focus on, KKK and, I hate black people, or I hate Asians. Certainly these are ideas that come from being racist, but that's not the only angle. If you think that Japanese are good at math, right, and it's not based on culture, that's racist, right? Because the whole fundamental of what racist means is that you believe that someone's, like, what they're capable of, or how you would describe someone in terms of their attributes is based on their skin tone, right? So if you think just because I'm Japanese, I'm good at math, that's racist, because you think that my abilities are based on my physical traits. So you could think something positive or negative, but we usually focus on the negatives, but it's not necessarily negative.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Bigotry.
Do you believe that people are more genetically predisposed to be better at certain things than other groups?
I think geographically, people have differing IQs depending upon where they come from. With the Japanese and the Koreans being at the top of the heap.
I've heard that as well. And should that be debated, or should that be shut down?
Why should you shut down anything?
I don't know.
I think when
Are you insane?
I think when you talk about stuff like that, what you're getting into is, let's say, for example, we could say that people who are over 300 pounds are really good
That was
at
just a midnight movie.
Are really good at things like being a sumo wrestler or something, or people who are over 7 feet tall. They are better at, like, throwing a basketball over a hoop. Like, the point is that we're all unique. So some of us have stronger thigh muscles and whatever. So if you want to, you can categorize. You can focus on certain traits that have certain benefits, and then you can create a concept of, like, hey, that's a race.
The IQ.
You know what I mean? Because we're not machines.
The average IQ in Japan is higher than in most other countries in the world. Same thing goes for Korea.
And Korea and Japan have a higher standard of living than those countries with lower IQs. And the thing about that is, wealth, poverty is easy. Wealth is difficult. Our species evolve in poverty. And it takes ingenuity, and it takes...
So Walter Williams, who came from poverty, is clearly a very smart man.
Yes.
With a very high IQ.
Yes. Yes.
Although his IQ did drop precipitously about a month ago.
Well, Walter Williams is dead.
Yeah, that's why his IQ dropped precipitously.
Okay. Well, I don't know why that was even a comment. Go ahead.
I think we kind of got sidetracked on that question that I was asking you about, and to further illustrate what I was saying about the reluctance to talking about anything regarding race. I can give you evidence in proof of what's happening right now. So right now, so again, I don't focus on what liberal media is saying, conservative media. Like, I go to the source. So I'm currently, and I have been monitoring actual white nationalists. Like, these are people. One of the conversations I watch them discuss is about Black people going back to Africa. So this is the real deal, not the racist that the liberals talk about. Like, where everyone's racist. Like, not these people are actually racist. Those people right now, one of the conversations I've been seeing going on is, first of all, they loved Donald Trump, and they're very disappointed that he has left. And the general sentiment is that their numbers has massively grown since his presidency. So actual white supremacists, like the real deal, not the MSNBC calling everybody racist, the real people who really have these views are exploding. But conservative media, they're going to be blind to that because, again, they're waiting for the hoods. They're waiting for Black people are monkeys. Everything else is invisible to them. So they only see the left race baiting. Meanwhile, actual racist groups are growing and expanding. And it's like, if you're watching conservative media, you'd have no idea. Look at the Capitol attack. You had guys with anti-Semitic logos and stuff on their clothes. None of this was discussed. Even Jewish Ben Shapiro doesn't want to talk about 6 million Jews was not enough seen at the Capitol.
I kind of agree with you, but those things don't hold out into a vacuum. One of the things I remember when I was at the Women's March, and they would say, refugees are welcome here. And I questioned this. I said, if refugees are welcome here and those refugees are oppressed, or like, say, oppressed minorities, I asked the question, are white South African refugees accepted here? And is South Africa not a racial vendetta nation? And do we not see some of the same talking points that the leftists have, like truth and reconciliation? Those are South African terms. And why don't we, why can't we talk about that? Why can't we say that, hey, South Africa seems to be a racial vendetta nation? Is that not true? And if you're hearing this kind of talk, and I've heard, some of the Black militants talk, like when South Africa first became a nation.
Black, calling militants Black, that's racist.
Well, okay, enough out of you. Come on, you're not adding it to anything. But no, but I remember Khalid Abdul Muhammad, what he said about South Africa.
I told you several times. Bigotry, not racism.
All right, that's okay. That's fine. You made your point. But hold on. Can you? Okay, before you chime in, how do you feel about South Africa, and why can't that be discussed? Because I remember we had Senate hearings. Biden had Senate hearings years ago about apartheid. Why can't we have talks about the racially motivated farm murders that happen in South Africa? And in Zimbabwe, I'm not at. Okay.
if black people, we can define what that really is. Are black people in South Africa the same as black people in America? Again, can you find me a definition of a black person?
Again, it's primarily of sub-Saharan African descent. But
okay, find me a definition.
First of all, you're okay, Joe. Okay, Joe, can you put him on mute for a minute? You want to chime in? I'm not asking you a question. I'm asking you.
He will not be muted.
Okay, good idea.
All right, I'm not asking you the question. The question is not directed to you, Howard. Debate me. What is your feeling on that, on South Africa?
I'm not familiar with it.
I don't see why.
Okay. I wish you'd hang up on Howard right now because he's just chiming in at inappropriate times.
Wow. You are becoming quite a hand-wringer, aren't you?
Shut up, Howard.
I apologize. And this is the point that I say is that harmony is not, and South Africa is a leftist nation. The same thing with Zimbabwe. These are leftist nations, and harmony is not attainable in leftist nations. And South Africa and Zimbabwe are perfect examples of that. And I see a lot. Go ahead.
Let me ask you this: how do you stay informed about what's happening in this country, politically and otherwise? What's your source of information?
I look at a lot of different information.
Every week. He attends the clan meetings every week.
Howard,
other than the clan meetings, like we already know what that's discussed there. Like what
I listen to a lot. I do listen to Tim Pool. I listen to CNN, and I think they're worse than Tim Pool. I think they're far more biased. And I remember.
Oh, no way.
I remember when CNN had stoic people on who just informed the news and never lectured. I mean, Don Lemon and Brian Stelters would never have made CNN in the 80s and 90s. I think these are really horrible people.
So do you recognize, or in terms of in your view, well, I guess what I'll say the way that I see the media, and you can tell me whether you see it in a similar way or not. I don't think we do because of what you said about Tim Pool. But from what I see, CNN and MSNBC are bottom of the barrel corporate news networks. If you're going to watch corporate news, I think ABC is probably better. CNN and MSNBC are very partisan. And that's one of the reasons why I put them as the bottom of the barrel. Now, that being said, once you jump into independent media, things get far worse. Because these independent guys, whether it's Young Turks, Tim Pool, Blaze TV, Crowder, Brian Tyler Cohen, David Pakman, most of these guys are essentially propagandists, and they take the corporate model that CNN does and MSNBC does, and they take it on steroids. If you think CNN and MSNBC are partisan, nothing compared to these independent channels. Because you go to a channel like Tim Pool, his channel is almost entirely attacking the left, supporting the right, apologizing for the right. So, for example, Cruz does a screw up, right, with the whole Cancun thing. Rather than just simply make a video and calling out Cruz.
Wait. Why is that a screw up? If I went to Cancun, is somebody going to tell me I'm a bad person because I escaped whatever it was? Tell me what Senator Cruz was going to do in Texas at the time when he wasn't in the Senate, when he was on leave from the Senate for how many days. Why was Ted Cruz wrong? Tell me that.
The problem with what he did is actually something that I think most people that are talking about this don't recognize.
No, I didn't ask you the problem. I asked you
it's
what
not really
was wrong.
Let me finish.
Let him
It's not really about what he did. as much as it is about.
Well, then if it's not about what he did, then what is it about? Because he either did something. Okay.
Okay, I'm not. If you're not gonna let me talk, then I'm not.
Yeah. Okay, Howard. Joe.
You asked your question. You asked your question.
Okay. Please, when you're Howard, when you're done when you're finished talking, let him respond, please. Okay. Debate me. Do you have a response?
Excuse me. I don't know who your guest is, but he hasn't stopped talking since I've started listening. He has been.
No, but when you're okay, Howard, when you are talking, and when someone else is talking, you've interrupted him.
He's been talking 80% of the time. You don't interrupt him. What are you, afraid?
I'm not afraid of anything. I just
if you don't want me to answer your question, why did you ask me a question? You asked me a question, I'm answering it, and then you interrupt me. I was only talking because you asked me a question.
What did he do wrong?
Again, what I was saying is it's not about what he did wrong. In my view,
well, then you didn't have to.
Wait a minute, Howard. Let him finish. Let him finish, and then respond.
He's going to repeat the same. He's going to repeat the same thing. I asked, what did Ted?
No. This is not a courtroom, Howard. Let him respond, and then you respond. That's how it goes.
Respond with the same answer. It's not an answer.
I never said it because you interrupted me. I have not said it once. I never completed my sentence.
Mr. Midnight Movie, Brian, what did Ted Cruz do wrong?
I don't. That's not polite, Howard. Why are you interrupting him?
Either gets answered or it doesn't. Just move on.
Why is it impolite on my side, but not impolite with somebody?
Because you're interrupting. It's impolite because you're interrupting him.
Just get on with it. Let's go.
I'm sorry.
Not answering my question.
All right, one more time. I'm hanging up on you. Stop. We got it.
Oh boy, you're a tough guy. I'll tell you. Made my dick hard.
You're being. There we go. That gets us.
Okay, you know what? I think we got sidetracked on that particular incident. But the larger point that I was trying to make is that
shut up. Just shut up. I hung up on him. I had enough. Sorry, go ahead and answer that.
He's just absolutely yeah. I mean,
couldn't handle.
The larger point that I was making is that the CNN and MSNBC absolutely are partisan, like I said. So, for example, Antifa riots. Antifa could be right now burning down a courthouse, and it's very unlikely that CNN or MSNBC will report on it. A real reluctance to that. However, the list of things that they have that level of blacklist, or we're not going to talk about it, is tiny compared to what's happening in conservative media. For example, the impeachment trial for Donald Trump was almost completely 100% censored by conservative media. The only person who even tried to cover it a little bit was Steven Crowder, but he still didn't really cover it. It was mostly him telling you how to think about it. He was just going and saying, oh, it's the Democrats, this and that. He didn't let people hear what the Democrats were saying and let them hear what the Trump attorneys were saying. If you go to the left, these guys were all live streaming the entire thing, like 3 hours, 4 hours, hardly interrupting. So if you're watching these liberal channels, you were able to judge for yourself whether you feel like Trump was guilty or not. If you're watching conservative media, you didn't get that ability because none of them showed the trial at all. And if they showed a little bit of it, it's just a little piece, and then it's kind of like, oh, it's this, that. And then look at the Capitol attack. That's been a completely blacklisted topic. There's been hundreds of people arrested, tons and tons of stories that have happened since the 6th. And that entire story has been completely blacklisted by conservative media. No one wants to talk about it, but then AOC says, oh, I could have died. All of a sudden, everybody, 1-2 videos, oh, she wasn't really the Capitol. They ignore all the military people got arrested, Pelosi's laptop story. Like all these stories are happening and they're not talking about it. I've never seen that level of suppression of information happening on the left. Like please, I don't know everything, so maybe you've seen it, but the biggest thing I've seen is the Antifa stuff. That's not the only thing, but that's the biggest thing that I've seen where they consistently don't want to talk about it. But the right has so many topics where no discussion, no videos posted.
The left suppresses a lot of things. Like I said, The issue of South Africa, they have absolutely suppressed because, like I said, they have an ideology that they believe, and they never want to deviate from that. I remember years ago, I don't know if you know who Tim Wise is, but
No.
he's he's one of these anti-racist lecturers. And I asked him years ago about South Africa, and he said it was a horrible situation. But he said it doesn't compare to what blacks went through apartheid. And I asked him another question, like, why don't we talk about this issue like we talked about apartheid? And he didn't answer me. Flashback a few years later when Donald Trump was president, and I don't know how Tucker Carlson got involved in that, but he said, why don't we talk about the farm murders that are happening in South Africa? And to me, it is part of the civil rights industrial complex that wants to shut down debate, and they are very, in my opinion, very powerful, and they choose what you hear and what you don't hear.
But can you talk about, because we're comparing conservative media to liberal media?
Yes.
So I don't think conservative media is talking about that either. So
no, they don't. Well, no. Let me just say this: much of conservative media kind of bends the knee to the woke left, to certain aspects of the woke left, because they'll get shut down completely. If you mention, there are plenty of alternate, like Atheist is Unstoppable, kicked off, and he has family from South Africa, and there are a few that say, and it's just my opinion. Like I said again. And yeah, conservative media maybe did not cover the riots, and there are crackpots on both sides. I think the crackpots on the left side do get protected and the left gets away with things that the right could never get away with. And Tim Pool did say that, and I agree with him on that. I see evidence for that.
Because look at what things are so bad right now that I'm having a big problem on my channel, because I don't want to end up looking like the very thing that I critique all the time. I'm talking about media bias. I don't want someone to come to my channel and it's every day it's like, oh, the conservative media this and whatever. But the thing is, it's so bad on that side that I'm being overwhelmed. I'm just one person. Like, there's not that much stuff happening on the left that's like, I mean, the main thing that I see going on is, again, the Antifa riots. And I call them out every time. Like, why aren't you guys talking about this? But every day it's some craziness that's happening in conservative media where it's kind of like the Chow thing. I'm going to monitor and see, but I don't think they're going to discuss this because she's a Republican, right? So Republican corruption, you can't talk about it. All right. If it was a Democrat doing it, it would be something to be discussed, but I've never seen videos from any of the conservative channels where it's calling out a Republican, calling out someone. They'll do an honorable mention in the middle of a video. Like, they'll say, well, I don't really like Republicans, but they won't make a video about it. Like, tell me why you don't like Republicans. Make a video, 5 reasons why the Republicans suck. No one wants to do that on conservative side.
Well, I mean, there are, like I said, you deal with your crosshairs, that which is right in front of you. And the people that are calling for censorship is on the left. And that, to me, is the biggest threat. Cancel culture is on the left, and they want it, I see woke leftism as people who have malice, who have no concern with people's well-being. And I basically see them as a much bigger threat than I do the right, because they are part of the establishment. To me, the right-wingers, a lot of them are the Alex Jones are seen as crackpots, whereas some of these leftists are seen as legitimate because the establishment sees them as that. I mean, when they talk...
The right cancel culture too, right?
What's that? Oh, yes.
The right, they do cancel culture as well, right?
Yes, they do. Yeah, I acknowledge that. there is a form of cancel culture on the right as well. I would agree with that. But again, the right is not part of the establishment. The establishment, as of now, is left, and they went all in on Black Lives Matter, and it was unquestioned. Black Lives Matter exuded unquestioned moral authority, and they were very authoritarian. And I don't see any evidence that disputes that. I mean, do you see the moral authoritarianism with groups like Black Lives Matter and Antifa?
With setting aside the fact that Black Lives Matter is obviously not one thing, right? It's not a single organization with a single structure. So you can have a Black Lives Matter group in wherever in the country, whatever, Los Angeles, and these guys are real savages and they're doing some craziness. And then you can have another one that's in New Jersey somewhere, and these guys are pretty legit. So putting that aside, the worst that I've seen come from people who associate with the Black Lives Matter movement, I would describe as basically domestic terrorists. I look at them as guilty by association with Antifa. I feel like Antifa basically are their henchmen. So a lot of them in Black Lives Matter don't want to necessarily do some of the dirty work. So what they do is they let Antifa do their thing. So it's kind of like they know Antifa, they know what Antifa does. They see them at their events. They can see that they're there, and they can reject them if they want to, if they have a problem with it. But they just, we're just gonna pretend like we don't see them, and then let them burn down stuff, and then, hey, we didn't do it, like that kind of a thing. But again, that's not Black Lives Matter in general, because there are people, unfortunately, that Black Lives Matter movement has dominated. Like, I really wish there was a competing thing. So let's say an average person in this country who, looks like me and has concerns about racism, and we see on the news this Black Lives Matter thing, and we're like, yeah, we should matter, Black Lives Matter, and having no idea about Antifa because it's not reported, right? You don't know about Antifa and Black Lives Matter harassing people and all that kind of stuff. You don't know about that. You just see it as this kind of a civil rights thing, and you're out there with your sign and whatever, and have no idea. You never went to their website. You never saw what they're really about. So it's a little bit complicated, and I know it goes the same thing on the right as well. There are people who perhaps get caught up in things, like look at the Capitol attack. I know there were normal people who went there just to have their voices heard, and they just wanted to have their flags and whatever, and not realizing you've got Proud Boys and other groups who had other plans and are using them as sort of tools. So it's a little bit complicated. It's not one thing or the other thing. Even Antifa has people that are not really involved in the violent aspect of it.
I'm hearing background on Joe's end. Now, what is your opinion of the Proud Boys?
Proud Boys, I think, represents potentially, first of all, the same factor exists with them in terms of the not being a monolith. So you have Proud Boy chapters or whatever they call themselves that might be really, really sort of disgusting type of people, and you have some that may not be as bad. So it really depends on where you are, which group. And then, of course, they're all individuals. They can all do whatever they want to do. But overall, what I see is I think they're a good example of the age that we're in now that I think a lot of people have not caught up to yet. Remember I talked about racism, like on the conservative side, they're not going to see it until it's super overt, the white hoodie or whatever. And since we're past that now, like, I think if I'm a white nationalist, I'm not going to go around saying black people are monkeys or whatever. Like, I know that's not going to fly. So I'm going to say I'm not racist, and I'm going to say I have no problem with black people. I'm going to say those things while meanwhile I actually hate them, and I'll do things to suppress them. So the thing about it is, I think today it's about being sort of clever and covert and slick And I think Proud Boys represents a little bit of that. So, and again, not a monolith, but somewhere in there, they're actually, well, look at the Proud Goys, right? I think they call themselves. So it looks like there is potentially a racist element in there. But they might be trying to be slick about it, because I did a lot of research and I couldn't find, I watched their events. I watched the live streams. So what are these guys actually doing? I've never heard them say anything racist. I've never heard them do anything racist. I've seen them actually work with Black Lives Matter before. I've seen that happen a couple times. They have minorities as members. So everything looks clean, but then you have this internal rivalry where they wanted to do this Proud Goy thing. Are you familiar with that, by the way?
You know what? They did have some kooky members and stuff, and they did have. There is evidence that they had some anti-Semitic and some racist groups, but they've basically purged those people out of their ranks. I'm not a fan of the Proud Boys or Black Lives Matter, but to me, the Proud Boys became a thing because of Antifa. The Proud Boys were a response to Antifa and to the fact that these groups initiate force, and the left is allowed to initiate force, and if the right responds to it, they can get persecuted. And in my opinion, if somebody initiates force, however that person responds to it could never equal what they did.
The interesting thing that I'm realizing is I feel like that sneakiness that I said about Proud Boys.
Yes.
The short version of like my assessment of them is that at this point in time, I'm suspicious.
Yes.
I don't have anything solid, but I find that they might be one of these modern groups that are not what you think they are. But I'm not going to make accusations until I have solid evidence. But I just realized, I'm like, that's Black Lives Matter, right? They have this whole image of Black Lives Matter and we're against racism. But then you look at their website and you see all this like transgender stuff and whatever. And then they had that page that they deleted secretly where they were talking some globalist stuff. And you're like,
well, one of the leaders said we are trained Marxists. And years ago, that would, years ago, you could never move forward in this society if you made a statement like that. Marxism, it's something that our country took a hard stand against. We fought 2 hot wars against it. And even, back in the day, civil rights leaders, if they wanted any legitimacy, had to condemn Marxism and communism. They could not stand with it. If groups said we were Marxist, they were on the outer fringes of society. They may like, like the Black Panthers, but they were not legitimate. They were not part of the establishment. And today, Marxist groups are part of the establishment, and that for me is a danger, because nothing good comes of that, and nothing noble or good comes of that.
I think one of the clues that I use to really assess Black Lives Matter in terms of what they're really about is I look at their silence, because I've been monitoring them for months and months, trying to figure out like, what are these guys really about? And after a time, it's funny, they say silence is violence, right? Well, yeah, right? So when I see all these events where Antifa or whoever goes there and they're throwing Molotov cocktails or whatever, and I hardly ever see an outrage from Black Lives Matter like leaders. It has happened, but it's rare. Then I'm like, so your silence is violence. You are apparently okay with what's happening, like the burning of the courthouse. You're okay with it. Otherwise, we would constantly see them on the news saying, listen, we as Black Lives Matter, we don't stand for this stuff. And we since I'm here on MSNBC, I want to make a statement. Anybody listening, if you guys are involved in these burning of courthouses and whatever, that's not what we're for. I don't see it. I don't see it. So it's like you're okay with it.
I come,
right?
I come to the conclusion that fanaticism is bad wherever it comes from.
Yep.
And angry people, and I try not to be angry. Sometimes I got angry at Howard, but angry people cannot be trusted or not to be trusted. And Black Lives Matter is filled with angry people, and angry people are not about justice. They're about
as well.
Well, it's self-righteous anger, and it's ego. It's an ego-based move. It's become an ego-based movement, and that's not a good thing. And you can say the same thing with. You can say the same thing to a degree with members of Antifa. There are egocentric things in there, and there are opportunists in there, and there are hateful people in there. But like I said, to me, there is no group that counters both of them and counters the extremism on both. Because there's extremism on both sides.
But remember, yet again, it comes back to the media, right? Because if the media was honest on the left, right, Black Lives Matter would have never gotten to the size that it did. Antifa, I don't think would have gotten the level of destruction and violence that would have not gotten to that point. Because what happens on the left is by them not reporting on it, right, and by them being so slanted, people on the left, a lot of them are ignorant about what Black Lives Matter really is about, what Antifa is really about. And when you keep them in the dark, that limits the resistance. So let's say, for example, if CNN and MSNBC were did honest reporting, then there will be a growing number of people, which did happen organically, but it'd be much more, of people on the left that are like, wait a minute, these Antifa guys, like, I'm all for racial whatever, but this stuff that they're doing, it's wrong. These guys are domestic terrorists. Like, there'd be more outrage. And then by them losing support on the left, it makes it more difficult for them to grow in size and blossom. That blossoming that happened was fostered by left-wing media that wasn't being honest about it. So you have the average person who's not following this stuff, and they look at these guys as like freedom fighters, and they're fighting for us and whatever. They don't know what's really going on, right? And again, the media, man, and the conservative media, they're doing the same thing. They're protecting a lot of the extremists on their side. So the people on each side are not able to be informed and therefore reject these guys as much as they should, right? It's like, oh, QAnon, it's just a few people. The left, they're talking about QAnon. Oh, white supremacy. Come on. That's old days. Nobody's in that group anymore. And same thing on the left. Like, Antifa? What? Antifa? Tell me about what Trump's people did. Tell me about, I don't want to hear, anything about Antifa. Let's talk about Trump and his, that's, this protects these extremists. That's how they're able to grow and grow and grow, because the people on their side are kept ignorant about what these groups are really doing. It's only the other side that knows. We need the community to be more informed about these things so that they can reject them more, so they won't blossom as much.
But how can we get there when people want to shut down debate? I mean, the thing is, for me, I wish there was an internet Bill of Rights where they said, if you're going to have 230, you have to have a First Amendment there. We have a First Amendment in this country. These internet companies were formed in America. America has the First Amendment, and I think that Section 230 should have a First Amendment clause in their thing. You know what? And the truth is, extremism is there, but you can't necessarily have a moderate discussion unless you're able to have freedom.
You are as wrong as you can be. Section 230 will be used against you. Taken away from Twitter, and they'll use it against you.
I said reform. I don't understand what you're getting at, Howard.
If you repeal Section 230, that leaves you wide open. And
No. I said a repeal saying that Section 230 should have a First Amendment clause in it. You have to have our constitutional.
Doesn't give you the right. First Amendment doesn't give you the right of free speech. So I don't know why you keep referencing the First Amendment. It tells the government to stay out of speech, not
Exactly, and it's actually interesting. I saw a senator make a comment about
the First Amendment doesn't speak to corporations; it speaks to government.
So here's an interesting thing. I saw a senator that actually was making a comment about First Amendment or whatever, and it was ironic because the First Amendment restricts him. You're the person that it's for, because you're the legislator. It's a restriction on what you can do. But he's sitting there talking about First Amendment in the context of private companies.
Well, again, this private company was the Section 230, in my opinion, was formed to for freedom of information, so we can all be informed and we can all speak. And I think that a good idea is to have a to have a First Amendment clause with these companies. If you can't be sued for things that you can say, you are not you're not a publisher, you're not a publisher, you are a platform. And if you're a platform, then the First Amendment should apply with that. Even though you're a private company, you should go by the law of the First Amendment because you're not being sued. So you're either a publisher. Hold on a second. You're either a publisher or a platform. Go ahead, Howard. What do you have to bloviate about on me? Tell me how horrible I am. Go ahead.
Yeah. Why do you characterize what I say as bloviate? I'm one of the few people you know that can constitutionally speak properly.
Well, go ahead, Howard.
First Amendment doesn't apply to me or to you. It only applies to government. Why do you keep saying you want the First Amendment to do this when it doesn't do it? And it never did.
I think he just really wants the freedom of speech, not the actual amendment. He wants that specific.
Well,
I guess
they are okay. They are these social media companies have said that they are a platform. Are they a platform, or are they a publisher? You can't be both.
I think they should be gone after with RICO.
Yeah, well, they are committing fraud. When you shadow ban somebody, you're committing fraud, and yeah, they should be gone after with the RICO statutes for that. I think we've. Go ahead.
I don't have an exact answer, but where I'm leaning towards in terms of solutions, because we can complain all day, but if we don't have solutions, doesn't make any sense. But I'm leaning more towards. So the government can't restrict free speech, right? But I don't see any reason why they can't, in some way restrict you from being partisan. So if you're a news organization, they're not going to say you can't say stuff. But if you can be proven that you are intentionally hiding certain details, like for example, CNN and MSNBC could be maybe they could be fined for a pattern. Like you have to go in a court of law. On this day, Antifa burned down 2 churches or whatever it is, and it was only reported by these organizations. Why was that? And then have them explain themselves. And then on this date, whatever. And if they can show a pattern that they're intentionally misinforming their audience, maybe there can be a penalty there, because I don't think that necessarily messes with free speech, because they're not saying you can't say something. They're just saying you can't hide certain details. Like if you're news, if you're going to be categorized as news, you've got to be giving balanced stuff. Now, it's not, they can't make it like digital to where you have to cover every single thing. If there's a pattern of it.
Sound.
What's that?
Tell me who's going to make that determination of what is sound and what is not partisan. Who's going to make that determination?
It's not a matter of partisan. It's a matter of if there are big stories that are happening, if there's a pattern of behavior where there are major stories that are happening and your organization is completely not covering them, and we can show that it's consistent. Every single time Antifa riots, you don't report on it. Every time that Trump supporters riot, you cover your case.
You want to make that illegal?
Say again?
You want to make that illegal?
I don't know if illegal is necessarily the term, but I want there to be some kind of consequences. I mean, it doesn't even, you don't even have to make it a fine. You can have a system where somehow you get this let's call it a demerit. Somehow publicly, it is like every time you do this kind of stuff, it is made publicly aware. So you can continue doing it. We're not going to fine you. We're not going to mess with what you can and cannot say, but we're going to make sure that the public is aware that you have this pattern of behavior of where you're not covering stuff. Like, however you do it, there needs to be something where there's consequences to this partisan media stuff. And again, simply calling it out, I think that protects your rights, right?
The public is not capable of being aware. The public walks around in a stupor. The masses are asses. They're not capable of knowing. They're beyond that. They haven't even attained that. And they don't care. And they don't want to know.
I
So
will
now
say,
you've made them aware. And they don't give a shit. So what?
well, one thing that I'm 100% positive on is we need to be at least trying to solve these issues. And I don't see that happening. Like, there should be ideas on the table. There should be some kind of, but
What
it's like
issue?
we know there's an issue. And
Give me an example of an issue you want to try to solve. One.
Partisan media.
Partisan media. So you want to make it illegal, or you want to fine them. And let me ask you, just as a quick aside, I want to go back to this whole fining thing.
Just to clarify, I don't want to do either of those things. I just want to I want to make it, I guess, de-incentivize that behavior. So even if there's no fine or there's no whatever, at a minimum, you can be called out. So we're not restricting what you, like, if your business, if you want to be partisan, you do that, but we're going to make the public know. I just want something
And you
done.
don't think that Mark Dice calls out CNN? You don't think that Mark Dice calls out Brian Stelter? Mark Dice, who has more of a following than Brian Stelter does?
Yeah, but that's
You want to make this, you want to make this the purview of government? You want to put this in the hands of government?
Mark Dice exists in an echo chamber, right? So he's preaching to the choir. His
Oh, well,
audience already knows.
don't get hung up on Mark Dice. He's an example. But you want to put this in the purview of government. You want to give government the authority to tell people what to think. That's fascism. Now, tell me why
That's not what I said at all. I said at a minimum, call it out. So if they're simply calling it out, they are not in any way restricting what you can say. You can be as partisan as you want, but all the government is doing is making more people aware of what you're doing.
Who's the hall monitor? Who's the one doing the calling out? Tell me. See, I don't think you thought this through.
Our representatives.
Oh, so the representatives that we have now, the ones in charge, you want to give them the responsibility and the power to call people out. which, by the way, they do in Congress with impunity, because nothing they say they can be held accountable for. So you want to give these unaccountable people who already have a bully pulpit, who already are calling people out, who already are very partisan, as you described, you want to give them the power? You want to give them the power to start calling people out on what? On the airwaves?
Here's the difference in terms of what I'm talking about versus what you're talking about. What you're discussing is a process that is unaccountable. Like right now, our government is so broken to where
wait. I didn't say anything of the sort. Why are you putting words in my mouth?
Huh?
You didn't hear me say that. Why'd you just put words in my mouth? You didn't hear me say that.
Huh?
You didn't hear me say what you just said. You just attributed a whole bunch of things to me that I never said.
What did I say? What did I attribute to you?
Because all I've done is ask questions. I didn't make.
What did I attribute to you? What words did I put in your mouth specifically? What are you talking about?
What did you just say that I did? You just said that I just did what?
I didn't say you did anything.
What I want said. You just said what I want is. How do you know what I want?
I don't know if maybe you misheard me or something. I'm not sure, but I'm not saying anything that you're saying. I'm just clarifying that the process that I guess what I was referring to is what you were describing, and I'm trying to make a contrast between.
Wait a minute.
What you were
Again,
describing.
I didn't describe anything. I asked questions. So again, here's what you just said. You said something about what I'm saying. I asked questions. I didn't say anything. I asked questions, which I'm still trying to get answers to. What am I saying?
No, actually, what you did is you referenced current activity that's occurring right now. The specific activity that you referenced was the fact that our government officials, I think you said bully pulpit or whatever, and I assume what you're referring to is like they'll get on the news or whatever, and like you see a Republican say, CNN doesn't report on this and whatever. Is that what you were talking about?
Assume. No,
I'm sorry?
Don't assume. Don't talk over me. You just assumed what I'm saying. I didn't say. What did I say? Very clearly, I said that Congress, the same people in Congress right now have a bully pulpit. They have no responsibility for what they say. They cannot be sued for anything they say. They can label you a rapist, and there are no repercussions against any of these people.
So
who is
that you're
it
saying that because basically by you saying what you're saying, you are confirming that my assessment of what you were saying was actually accurate, because what you're describing right now is what I.
Wait a minute. What am I saying? Because you just gave me a circular answer, and I have not a clue what you're referring to. All I said was
basically what you described is what I was thinking you were thinking, and I was actually going to get into that, but you interrupted me. What I was talking about is the exact same process you're talking about.
Keep interrupting me, sir.
No, he was
talking. You keep interrupting me.
Let him go.
I don't get the answer because you immediately jump in and then you suck all the air out of the room. I said to you that the Congress can say anything they want with impunity. There is no responsibility on their part. They are not held accountable for anything they say. They can say that you are a rapist, and there's nothing that you can do about it. Adam Schiff can say that you're a rapist.
So that's the second time that you've explained exactly what I was about to say.
Whatsoever. So exactly what is it that I'm saying? Because I think I've been very clear in what I said.
Okay, you just described 2 times exactly accurately my understanding of what you said. For some reason, you think that I misconstrued what you said.
I'm sorry. That was
twice now. You've described the very process that I was going to explain. And what I was getting into before you said, "Oh, don't put words in my mouth," was what you said. So basically, right now, yes, there's a lot of talk that we see on these hearings and whatever, but that is not what I was discussing, because you're right. There is no accountability. Even the hearings right now, they're sitting there and they get on camera and they say, "Oh, FBI, you guys need to answer questions," but they lie, they dodge questions. I'm not talking about that. The process that I would like to see happen, these things would not be allowed. If you are making a case that CNN is partisan, you would have to, like the way that we do in court, like you need to have your facts. There needs to be a standard of evidence that you need to fulfill. And if you can't really make a solid case, then whatever you're saying is dismissed. This whole free for all saying whatever, like you are correct. That stuff is useless. It's political theater. That's not what I'm advocating for. I'm advocating for court level, not literally court, but a court level sort of discussion where if you think CNN is partisan, make your case. Right? What's the evidence?
What's wrong? What's wrong with CNN being partisan? You want to make that illegal?
Again, it's not about law or making things illegal. It's about addressing the
No,
problem.
you just mentioned courts. You just lauded a court-like atmosphere. In a court, people are put under oath. Is Brian Stelter under oath?
Again, it's not literally court. I'm saying court
you don't answer a question. No, the answer to my question that I just asked you is no, Howard. Brian Stelter is not under oath. You never answer any question I ask you. You say things again. You just described what I was thinking, and I have no idea what you were thinking. You, sir, are very adept at weaseling out of questions. You don't answer questions. You weasel out of them, and you do it with impunity. I suggest you listen to this again and hear yourself, because I've been very clear what I said. My statements were very clear. Your answers are anything but clear.
What you just said is inaccurate. I did not say that you said what I was thinking. What happened was I was about to describe my assessment of what you said very accurately according to what you said twice. But you stopped me.
Nobody has any clue.
You assumed that I was putting words in your mouth.
I say to you, is Brian Stelter under oath? Why don't you just say, no, he's not? Why do you have to answer it with this meandering, traveling, I don't even know what it is? Why can't you answer a simple question?
Well, he's not in a court of law.
Exactly, and neither is Brian Stelter. Thank you.
But here's the deal. Why don't you allow him to answer a question without interruption? And you can
answer. Because he doesn't answer. I said, is Brian
Stelter interrupt me?
That's a yes or no question.
No. He can answer. See, the thing is, on my show, he can answer any way he wants, and then
and I call him out for his non-answer.
You know what? You can call him out after he's. You know what? How about you call him out? How about you call him out after he's concluded?
He never concludes.
He does conclude. That's inaccurate. That's not true.
So badly.
Howard, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question, Howard. Do you believe in compromise?
Do I believe in what?
Compromise. It's probably not in your vocabulary, but yeah.
No, I don't like compromise, because when it comes to rights, you want to cut up my pie. You want to say, you know what, just give me a little bit of that, and we'll all be friends. No, I'm not going to compromise on truth. I asked him a question. It's a yes or no question, and he wouldn't answer it. For some reason, he won't answer a question.
Well, I will compromise. You are accurate. You did, in fact, ask me a question about Brian Stelter, and because I was focused on another point, I did not give you a direct answer to that specific question. That is 100% accurate. Now, I would like if you did the same thing in terms of acknowledging what you did before, but I'm not sure if you will. But I'm willing to admit that you are correct. You asked me a question, I could have said yes or no, and I did not.
What did I do before? What did I do before? So again, you make a statement that has no factual basis. We don't know what you're talking about. What did I do?
What you did before is I was in the process of describing my thought process in terms of what you said. You assumed that I was putting words in your mouth and whatever, and then you go twice and point out that basically what I was about to say was actually accurate. The whole point of like Congress saying stuff without accountability. That's what I was about to say, but you cut me off in the middle of saying that. That's where I was headed.
I didn't say what you said was accurate. I just said you meander. Why would I say you're accurate?
You said I was putting words in your mouth, but I had not yet finished my point.
You said what I said, and clearly,
guys, this conversation is becoming okay. This is becoming in a circular manner. I'm gonna change topics just a little bit about culture and morality. Years ago, I remember
Dr. Seuss.
That's fine. here's I want to relay this to Debate Me. I remember as a child when I bought a bike, a lock for my bike, and my father said, "You know what? When I was a kid, I never needed that kind of thing." Do you think that the culture, or today's culture, discards morality as far as stealing and other types of things? Debate Me.
I guess I would have
That's
to
the
say.
yes or no question. What do you mean debate?
No. Okay, let him answer the question the way he wants to answer it. If you want to come in,
So that's actually, by the way, that's actually a perfect example of what we said. I was literally about to say yes, but before I could say yes, he jumped in and said he doesn't say yes or no. I was literally about to say yes.
Okay.
But yes, so to answer your question, yes, I agree.
Now, hold on. Let me ask you that. Do you think it is wrong, or do you think it is wrong to have a child out of wedlock?
Do I think it's wrong? Or
No, I'm asking. Debate me. Then you can. Do you think it's wrong to have a child out of wedlock? As a general rule, is having a child out of wedlock wrong?
It's not wrong. It's just not.
Okay. First of all,
I can't really give a yes or no on that one, because the word wrong, like wrong based on what? Like, should it be illegal or is it unethical?
For the most part, is it considered kind of rather immoral to do so? And is it part? Do you think it leads to basically the erosion of our society and the erosion of morals, to see how many out of wedlock births that there are? Or is there a correlation?
I will say no. I don't think it's wrong, but I do think potentially it's not a good idea.
Should we subsidize? Should our government subsidize out of wedlock births?
So specifically, when you say subsidize, you're saying in what way?
Well, we give them welfare, and we give them. We give single mothers who have children outside of marriage. We give them housing and benefits. We never.
Who are these single mothers? Could you elaborate on the makeup of where they come from?
They come from all over society.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do.
So in short, you're asking some fairly complex questions. It's really requires a little bit more detailed discussion. And that's something that I've necessarily thought that much about, so I don't know that I could really contribute that much to it. But I can say that currently the way we're doing things, I disagree with the way we're doing things right now, because the problems that I see is I feel like we are incentivizing a lot of, let's call it, bad behavior. Like I believe that they're part of the population that are incentivized to have children for financial benefit, and that's not a good thing. I definitely agree that's not a good thing. Now, what's the proper way to do it? I don't know.
Yeah. Do you think?
Sorry, and who is that population?
Well, okay, that's
It's the blacks.
yeah. Okay, let me ask you another question. Do you think today's civil rights movement in many ways champions the degenerate criminal?
Wait, what does
I
what
really
champion
don't understand
degenerate?
that question.
I said, does today's civil rights movement in many ways does it champion the degenerate criminal?
I would think you would have to define who the civil rights movement is.
Well, Black Lives Matter right now is the most prominent one that people talk about, but they do seem to champion
Yes,
degenerate criminals.
champion thugs and marauders, murderers, thieves, firebombers. Yes, your definition.
I would say technically no. However, the effect of their actions does, in my view, align with what you're saying. So, meaning, like
What
for
does that mean?
example, Jacob Blake, for example. Jacob Blake was, well, he's still alive, I guess. So, he's absolutely a trash individual. However, I don't feel that they champion this thug. I think their
Who is
obsession
Jacob
with
Blake?
race, right? The obsession with
is
race and this like liberal media stuff got them in this sort of a narrative or this bubble of, oh, racism, whatever. And they're so focused on, fighting against racism that they're blind to, wait a minute, what really happened here? Like, who was this guy? Why was he there? Like, they don't see that. So it's not necessarily that they're doing that. They're like championing because he's a thug or they're okay with thugs. It's just they're blind. They're just obsessed with this race stuff. And I think that's the way I look at it.
They know not what they do, so they're not responsible. That's brilliant.
Well, wait. Well, he didn't say that. I don't think he said that, Howard. But my point is, they don't value. Okay, yeah. They don't value things like honor and nobility, and there's not a lot of nobility and honor with these so-called modern civil rights groups. They all basically cow down to the lowest common denominator within human behavior.
Now, I certainly put the accountability for these things on the people that are doing it, the media, and even the consumers of that media. Because I mean, we live in an information age. Like, we all are capable of, stepping back and doing our own research if we so choose. However, I think part of the problem is also from the other side of the media, so conservative. So conservative media, a lot of times, again, remember, racism is an off-limit topic, right? So typically what happens with these police shootings is conservative media will examine things and try and see if there's an angle where the person was a thug or they were a criminal or whatever, and they jump on it. So the people on the left, they're observing this, and they already view the right as racist, right? And they're like, look at this racist. What does it matter that he was a criminal? That has nothing to do with, and that's how the conversation goes. So what that ends up happening, the effect of that over time is any discussion about who these people are and what they did is considered as racist, because the main people that focus on it are coming from the group that they think are racist. So now if you're on the left, you're not allowed to have a conversation about Jacob Blake and he's a criminal. I can't, I'm not on the left, but I can't talk about Jacob Blake in terms of his criminal or whatever. They won't accept that from me either, right? Because they'll just associate me with you're watching Fox News. Are you a conservative?
Well, you're either a moral or noble person or you're not. And these things, basically, the police right now, a lot of them are not even given due process. They're guilty before they're innocent in some of these public forums, and that's
absolutely.
That's not the way it should be. Even Derek Chauvin, he's entitled to due process, and there's more to the case than meets the eye.
Let me tell you how bad things are. I used to watch news media casually for decades. I only recently got into politics and started paying attention. So most of my life, I was focused on my career and my hobbies or whatever. So I would casually watch some of these big news stories, CNN, MSNBC, whatever, typically like liberal sources. So once I started investigating in terms of what was happening now, and I started realizing all the bias and how things are slanted, at one point in time, I made a decision to completely discount all my opinions of previous events. Whether it's what was that kid, the kid that with the, I don't remember. Oh man,
Trayvon Martin.
Yeah, Trayvon Martin. Like I said, you know what? If someone asks me what I think about any of these past shootings, my answer is I have to look into it. I completely, like, whatever my thoughts were, I said irrelevant, because I realized that my knowledge of these things was coming from tainted sources, from the media, and then also from the people who consume it. So a friend would say, "Did you hear about such and such?" And the police.
Well, I mean, the whole
Right?
the whole narrative of Trayvon Martin and was a complete fabrication and a lie. And I've always come to this belief that once somebody engages with another person in combat, in a physical altercation, however that person responds can never equal what that person just did. Like, if someone like goes to punch me and I pull out a firearm, in my eyes, I'm in the complete right to use force, because they initiated force with me. They can't, a person, in my opinion, cannot initiate force and then start the rules of engagement. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's just my belief. Once someone gets physical with me or with anybody, that other person who was engaged with, that person is allowed to respond in just about any manner that they wish to.
My personal view is I think that I do consider, like, let's say you did something, you assaulted me physically in some way.
Yeah.
I do think that my response needs to consider not only the level of what you did to me, but also the level of threat that you posed to me. So, for example, if you slap me in the face, it's absolutely not appropriate for me to take out a knife and start stabbing you. Like, that is inappropriate. Unless for some reason I'm confident that you're about to kill me. Right? It can't be, oh, you slapped me, so you're gonna take whatever I give you.
Once somebody crosses the line and physically assaults you, now, on average, you don't know what type of threat they're going to continue to impose. And only a slave, turns the other cheek. By nature, if somebody assaults you, that, you by nature have a visceral reaction to that, and like, hey, this can't be tolerated, because it's putting me in the position of being a slave.
Well, my response is, if I were assaulted in some way, when I say assaulted, let's say struck. If I was struck in some way physically by someone, my next immediate response is threat assessment. Right? I'm not gonna just respond automatically and just like, oh, I'm gonna go knock you out or whatever. Instantly, I'm gonna make a quick assessment of what is the threat level that you pose. And if it is low enough, my response will be to basically de-escalate and try to, right, like, I guess for me, violence is appropriate for self-defense. Now, you should be held accountable. Like, you shouldn't have put your hands on me in the first place. And I will see to it that you are held accountable. But I'm not going to engage in violence unless it is to protect my life or to protect someone else. So that decision comes from the threat assessment. If I feel that there is a sufficient level of threat, then the point of, like, defending myself and striking back, that's where that comes from.
Yeah, well, I mean, I have kind of an extreme view on self-defense, and I believe once someone crosses a barrier, and not in all cases, but when someone crosses a barrier, they, the person should be able to deal with them in an extreme manner. Because to me, striking someone that you disagree with is very extreme, and using violence to someone who's just talking is extreme. That's an extreme. That's an extreme person, and they should. Part of me believes that they should be dealt with in an extreme way.
I like that you point out the fact that they are in fact just talking. Like for you to resort to physical violence just because of words. And I'm a person, like, again, I know a lot of people are very emotional, but for me, I don't care what people say to me. I mean, you could, like, I'm not one of the people, like, there's certain things that are off limits, like you're gonna insult my mother or whatever. I could care less. Like, words mean nothing to me. I don't get triggered based on things. I've even had people come to my videos and write racist things. I could care less. Call me what you want to call me. Like, that has no effect on my life. It doesn't, like, it's irrelevant to me. So to go physical based on what somebody said, that's like, yeah, come on.
I'll tell you something though. I believe that people on the left are much more likely to go physical on things that are said than the right. Now, the right may do it. The right will do it too. There are extremists on the right, but I often see this more often on the intolerance of the left than I do the right.
I would have to agree, and I think it's interesting the way that I also accurately predicted what happened in the Capitol attack. So even though I was observing all of these rallies on the right and stuff like that, so I clearly observed the pattern that they're not the violent ones. They're not the ones that usually lead to that. I was, however, extremely confident that there was going to be violence from the right on the state certification dates, and especially the one in DC. Like months in advance, I warned my family. Like, I've never done this before. I let them know, stay away from government buildings or whatever. Because what I've seen is the right generally is not violent, but when they are, it's going to be bad.
Well, yeah, I haven't, but I haven't seen them actually be as, and I could be wrong on this, but I haven't seen them be as violent as the left as of now. I mean, and they could be, and they certainly have more weapons than the left.
They are far more violent. It's not even close. Typically, whenever a right-wing extremist gets violent, usually at a minimum you're talking about multiple body bags. Now, in contrast, they were having daily riots, like left-wing extreme, daily riots in the streets, out of control, and yet they could easily go 40 days of violence and riots without a single death. A right-wing extremist going even one event without somebody dying, like, I don't think I've ever seen it.
I'd like to see the evidence on that, because I haven't seen like how many like murders or deaths by right wing extremists. I mean, there are like the Timothy McVeigh bombing. I guess I can point out there, but for the most part, I don't see the right wing extremist murdering people and doing the like. I just don't see that. And a lot of the anger comes at the fact that the left is really getting away with things and not being properly prosecuted. When you burn down somebody's business, and you see businesses burned down, that's gonna strike you. That's gonna kind of like hurt you at your core, and think like
you just saw. You have a very fresh example of what happens when the right-wing extremists strike. They almost crushed to death a police officer. They're so violent that even the police that are a protected group, Blue Lives Matter, even that was not enough to stop them. I mean, they had cops, their eyes gouged out. Dozens of them were in critical condition. Like, I cannot imagine Antifa doing something like that. The idea,
I'm sorry. I've seen. I hate to cut you off, but I have seen Antifa like stomp somebody's head.
No, hold on. I know, but you're making there's a distinction that you're missing. This is what I would be shocked to ever see. The idea of having dozens of Antifa guys going after a police officer, and the police officer is crying out in pain. And they're just go, who, like Antifa would never do that. What happens with Antifa is you have one lone wolf idiot, like the guy who shot, what's his name, in Portland, that Trump supporter. Shane, was it Shane?
Yeah.
What his name was.
But
the guy that shot him in the, what's his name?
I forget his name.
But the Patriot Prayer guy, right? This guy stalked him and basically assassinated. But that was one guy. Antifa as a group going after police officers and the guys, you're gonna kill them like they would never do that.
Have you heard of the case of I guess his name is Keith Love, the guy who stomped the and he wasn't a Trump supporter. We don't know whether he was a Trump supporter or not, but they stopped him, and they were doing these militant, like stopping people in the road and stuff, and they pulled him out of his car, and they kicked him first, and the guy then stomped his head. I mean, they are violent, and these people, a lot of them believe that they are morally superior to the group that they're against. So whatever they do to them doesn't. They believe they have a right to. They have a moral right to, and I believe that with the left.
Now, keep in mind. Now, you're talking to someone who has observed the murders from left-wing extremists. Like, I followed it. Like the security guard guy. Mm. I saw that. I saw the Trump supporter guy that was basically assassinated. I saw the other Trump supporter who went to the memorial for that guy. They try to run him over. So it's not that I'm unaware. Like, I've seen what they've done, but there's a key distinction that I don't think you're acknowledging. Every single time we have these situations of extreme violence, it's always random people as opposed to the movement. Like, again, the idea of dozens of right-wing extremists crushing a cop almost to death compared to one idiot or even a few idiots that they have a beef or whatever, and they decide they're going to go and stomp some guy out. Like, that's not the same thing. Like, I would never see as a movement. So you have like dozens of them like attacking someone like that. It's always an individual. Everyone can decide to do whatever you want to do, right? But what I look at is what the movement does. Because think about it. You at that moment, you had a bunch of Trump supporters, a bunch of right-wing extremists, and they're seeing this police officer being crushed, and they're okay with it, right? I mean, you had thousands of them there. There was no major like stop, whatever, like that. I've never seen Antifa do that. It's always like one guy, or it might be a few guys. But as a movement where it's dozens coordinated, like doing something like that, I mean, the closest I've seen to that is where they had the police officers were in a police station, and they were trying to light it on fire, and supposedly. You got to be careful with propaganda. I actually thought that they tried to seal the door with quick cement. That's what I was hearing. But after the fact, I'm not sure if some of that information might have been propaganda. But that's the closest thing that I've seen. If they actually did that, that would be an example on par of what we saw at the Capitol attack. But otherwise, their violence is always, it's an individual, it's a lone wolf, or it might be a few people. And keep in mind, sometimes it's not even Antifa, because remember, propaganda on both sides. So if you go anywhere near Black Lives Matter protests or an Antifa event, and you go and you attack someone, automatically, Andy, No, all these guys, they're going to go ahead and call you Antifa and say, look what Antifa did. They don't know anything about you, like the same way that the left does with Jacob Blake, right? You assume the cop is racist. Oh, this racist cop, without the details. The right does the same thing. You dressed in black or you're near an Antifa event. Oh, look what Antifa did. how do you know this guy's Antifa? What's your evidence? Just because they were in the vicinity?
Well, regardless of the evidence, I mean, what we're seeing here, I mean, our politicians don't even want to call out Antifa. I mean, Biden said that they were an idea, and then Malcolm Nance, said that they were akin to Super Bowl rioters, that they don't have an agenda. And it's, I think a large portion of conservative or right-wing violence is a response to left-wing violence. And, they may have taken it, like I said, they took it overboard, and I'm against that kind of thing. I'm in favor of self-defense, but even when Antifa defends it, I mean, even when groups like the Proud Boys defend themselves, they are much more heavily prosecuted than the left wing. At least it seems that way to me. There's one case in New York and another case in Portland that I saw that was, like in New York, they didn't even have witnesses after, because Antifa confronted a group of the Proud Boys, and the Proud Boys basically got the better of them, and they refused to cooperate, and they were prosecuted anyway without the victims even testifying or even being cooperative. And that I don't even know if that's ever happened before.
Well, I actually gotta jump off, but I think one thing that would solve a lot of these issues, specifically from the political standpoint, like we talked about the media part in it, and that other guy that we're talking to, he kind of touched on this a little bit as well, is we need more accountability. Like this idea of you can just say whatever you want, like that needs to come to a stop. Like you can't, as a senator, be allowed to go on the news and just make stuff up and just say whatever, and that's okay. You can't just go to a hearing and just be on the floor, Senate floor, and just like say stuff. Like if you're making a statement, you're making a claim, you need to be required to like back it up. Like what's your evidence? And if you can't back it up with evidence, like to show what you're saying is factually true, you need to be held accountable. There need to be like consequences. Like, okay, you made this statement, we looked into it, we found its flaws, so we are now going to somehow penalize you because that behavior is not acceptable. You cannot be in our government saying stuff that's flaws and getting away with it, but there's no accountability. You say whatever, and the other side says whatever, and they're just back and forth, and then the public is reacting to it, and it's just, there needs to be consequences, man.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, government has never really had. I mean, if we're going to be honest about it, government has never held to consequences. Government has lied over the years. I mean, since as long as I can remember. And if you look at government, like they have lied to us for years, whether it's giving us dietary advice. I mean, the fact that, and I don't know if this still happens, but we promote anti-smoking, ads and our government, says that smoking is bad, and we have all these anti-smoking ads and stuff. But then we also subsidize tobacco. So we've always talked out of both sides of our mouths. And I don't think that will ever kind of end. And I don't know if we have the power to do that. The only thing that I see that we have the power to do is have freedom of speech and freedom of discussions. And discussions like these are productive, are the only productive thing that we have. Anything else to say before I end the show, Debatey?
No, other than I would like to commend you for, being part of I feel a very small part of our population that is, in my view anyway, willing to have an open dialogue. Like we're not going to agree on everything, and certainly I have certain viewpoints that you don't agree with, but you're open to hearing my perspective. I was open to hearing your perspective, and we're able to have a dialogue. I'm not insulting you. You're not insulting me. So I really commend you for that, because again, I think it's far too rare. Everyone wants to be in their own bubble, and like I made a video the other day, right? The Democrat that went on Ben Shapiro. Like, I really don't like Ben Shapiro, but I respected that Democrat that went on that channel, had a debate with him about the $15 an hour thing, and it was a constructive conversation. And I looked at the comments, and I could see here are Ben Shapiro's viewers saying, "Hey, this guy is actually kind of cool what he's saying." And I'm like, why can't we have more of that? You know?
Yeah.
Dialogue.
Yeah. And the only other person I think of that goes on conservative, because like I said, conservatives will always seem right now are willing to go on anything, and it's the left that doesn't. The only other liberal person that will go on conservative talk shows is Tulsi Gabbard. And we need that kind of thing. We need robust debate, and justice and morality and how to solve problems is about this, open and honest discussion. And if we can't have that, then not necessarily a good thing. Because if you can be, people can promise you the moon and the stars, but that doesn't mean that they're going to deliver it. So I think it's a good idea that we have an open and honest dialogue. I thank you all for listening. The show went quite a bit longer than I originally thought it was going to go, but it was a rather good discussion. It got a little bit contentious, but that's sometimes to be expected when people sometimes are passionate about their views. I am passionate, but I always strive for calm, stoic calm. Go to our website, Transparency and Merit, and also like and subscribe to my channel. And strive for calm. I know that I didn't do my best, but always strive for that. And I'll end the broadcast. And as always, strive for calm, stoic calm.